Welcome to the first of many talk discussions where we will discuss diverse topics of interest. My name is Deidre Morse and I will facilitate these discussions. I am a PhD candidate and a talk connoisseur. Today we will be discussing a book by Caribbean scholar Dr. Darlington Akaiso. So we will talk about the book, Farming with Guns. So my host today is Lisette Horton, a PhD candidate, and I will pass the virtual mic to her to have her introduce herself.
Hi, Deidre. I am Lisette. This is my first time doing this sort of feed. I am, as what you heard, PhD candidate for University of the West Indies Open Campus, and I'm quite intrigued with the snippet of the book that you sent, because I think we are from the African diaspora, and I think there are matters pertaining to certain social issues which we probably can find parallels within our Caribbean society. And let's hope that the discussion can help us to not only unearth things, but to solve problems that we have within our own social network here in the Caribbean.
Thank you
Over
so
to you, Ms.
much,
Long.
Lisette. Thank you. So just to give a brief overview of the book. So Farming with Guns addresses some of the history of the long-standing conflict of cattle herdsmen and farmers in Nigeria. It examines the specific social dynamic in Africa. The book details how scholars around the world have tried to understand the reason and purpose for this conflict and whether there is some form of agenda to gain access to grazing land. In this book, Dr. Akaiso examines how guns made their way into the grazing farmlands of Nigeria and how the integration of guns into the farmlands have impacted the community, specifically the community of Christians. So as a result, the book asks several questions, and they are: why are Christian churches being targeted by the Fulani herdsmen? Could this be an ethnic cleansing? Is the Christian community a possible target? Can anything be done to stop the murder of innocent Christians? And how did guns make its way into the grazing farmlands of Nigeria? And so some of the main points that I was able to um, grasp from the book would be the impact of guns and there being no justice for persons who may have been impacted or persons who may have been um, brought into the conflict or impacted by violence. And so a part of the book that stood out to me was the impact of the integration of guns in an otherwise peaceful farmland community. I found a similar parallel within the Caribbean community and how guns have impacted are otherwise peaceful communities. However, while we in the Caribbean region, we may have a system to address the crimes committed within our communities, in the farmlands, many of the culprits are not brought to justice. So I don't know if you would have any comments, Ms. Lisette, or if you would like to interject.
Uh, Not a matter of interjecting. It's just that I'm listening to the overview, and I want to start on the question whether or not it is about the removal of Christians, or is it really a war about power, war on power, or is it just a matter of what you call it now, entitlement by a set of persons? So I think I would want to work on the entitlement concept first. In reading aspects of the book, there is a chapter that spoke on the history of the Fulani people. and they seem to have two extreme personalities. One, peaceful demeanor. No matter how much wealth they have, their mantra is that they must remain humble in how they dress, in how they speak, and even with their wealth. However, that also leads them to a sense of entitlement because they have this mentality that they believe that they supersede, and this is what I'm reading, supersede all others. And to me, that would explain the way in which some of the crimes committed against the Christian persons have been executed. There is no tolerance, absolutely none. There was no leniency. They annihilated entire families and generations. They basically hardly left any survivors. The ones that survived were the ones that were able to flee from the extinction, as far as I'm concerned. Is it that they think that Christianity was something that they despise? I don't know. But if I'm interpreting the writings of our dear doctor here, it would seem as if over the years, this sort of entitlement has been echoed so many times. And I think in a recent outburst in an interview, a politician had stated that everything about Nigeria was from the Fulani people, and therefore everything must be for the Fulani people. So it's almost like a Trumpism sort of parallel where make America great again. So I'm saying make Nigeria great again for the Fulanis. So that's what I get from it. So anyway, what do you think, Miss Moss?
Thank you. You actually raised some great points in that. There's a great parallel within the people, the Fulani people, in that at one point you may have you may have wealth, but you are taught humility. You are taught to be humble. You're not supposed to, I guess, be flashy.
Mm-hmm.
So you raised some great points, and really trying to determine, and I guess that's where scholars is trying to really determine what is the issue. Is it entitlement? Is it because of religion, Christianity, or Islam, or is it because of ethnicity? Where does the conflict stem from? And so you raise a great point that will take me into point two that I was able to pull from the book, and that being religion and ethnicity. And so the book provides a brief overview of the importance of religion and ethnicity and how they can sometimes go hand in hand. In some ways, religion provides a symbol of identity. And Dr. Akaiso highlights in the book that many crises in Nigeria do not occur in isolation of ethnic and religious underpinnings. Even when they are sparked and escalated by certain factors that profoundly resemble the immediate cause, they are mostly fueled by various religious and ethno-sectional suspicions. So again, I see a similar parallel to that within the Caribbean region, where religion plays an important role in defining identity within our communities, and even ethnicities. So I don't know if you agree or if you want to throw your hands in.
Ethnicity. Hmm. Before I touch that, is one thing I know, they're all Blacks, Africans. So it would not be a case of race. Um, I'm thinking more of a cultural, maybe that's where the ethnicity comes in, because one set of persons see the the herd, the cows, as supreme. As a matter of fact, it's like without the cows, there's no life. And I think one sort of person considered themselves to be pastoral. So that speaks to a lifestyle. And I guess if the Christians do not share their sort of thought or that sort of thinking process, they are considered to be a threat. Um, Christianity is supposed to preach about love thy neighbor as they love thyself, themselves. Um, what I'm not getting from what I have read is whether or not the Christian groups have triggered anything that would have caused that sort of reaction. That is what is missing from the book. Um, if they had inflicted some sort of harm, or is it a case of fear of seeing a religious entity coming in and disturbing the traditional way of life, and therefore in order to have some sort of control, they would have to suppress it. The Dr. Akai, I think he gave a history of the whole attacks because it was just fists and clubs and sticks and stones, and then it graduated into arms. How the arms came in, I'm not sure. But it's one thing though, there has been a sustained history of attacks from one set of persons onto the Christians. And maybe it's because of fear of losing control that would cause them to take such a such a violent response to ensure that they have the land and they have the livestock. I don't think they want to change from that traditions. I guess where the ethnic traditions would come in. I don't think they have been quote unquote educated in a particular way to see an alternative. And the Christians are coming in, and I'm guessing here something that looking like an alternative that does not match with their thinking, and as a result, the attacks take place. So that's where, the whole ethnicity and history, um, parallel to the West Indies, control. The common denominator is control. The guns for drugs, you see where, and it's not a matter of farmers, but a set of young men who want to have control of a political turf. They use guns to get some sort of control. I don't know what is the case in your country, but I know that some of our persons have negotiated with persons within the Caribbean in order for them to get various kinds of high-powered weapons to ensure that they control certain territories. And one of the things that they do is to remove key persons who act as threats, who would be blocking that sense of control that they seek. So coming back into the country of Nigeria now, I see where they want control. The Fulani people want control. I don't think they want to have a sort of change, and seeing the growth of Christianity would interrupt the sort of social security that they had in their way of life. So I guess this is their way of handling change or differences.
And you think,
I don't know if it makes sense to you, but I'm
yeah, yeah.
I'm seeing just the underlying thing here is power.
Mm-hmm,
Yes. And preserving something that they believe is true and pure for them. Christianity interrupts that.
mm-hmm,
You see,
mm-hmm,
you Fulani people, as I said in the writings, even though they speak of humility, there's this thing about them looking at persons in a particular way. They're superior. Christianity does not deal with that. The Christianity actually speaks to equality, humility, civility, sharing, caring, um, the way how people are punished a particular way, and so there's a certain sort of order. The Ten Commandments is this sacred law that Christianity uses. The Fulani people, I don't believe they subscribe to that. It's too passive. I'm just guessing here because that's what I'm interpreting.
Yes. Yeah, and you raised some really good points that brings me into my next point, which is a focus of chapter 2, which speaks about pastoralism, piety, and power. And so
Three
chapter 2
P's.
explores how the 3 P's exactly. And so the influence of colonialism. And that is the point that I wanted to focus on. So chapter 2 really explores how the Europeans' influence led to the fragmentation of African ethnic groups in the 19th and 20th centuries. And here we see how colonialism impacted these communities, which resulted in the fragmentation of the population. The chapter provides a breakdown of the various communities that were formed. However, after reading this, I could not help but to reflect on the impact of colonialism, again within the Caribbean. And I was also able to draw on some parallels between the two. And so when you spoke about power and trying to maintain control, I also reflected on that chapter and how the community basically was fragmented. So you had, um, like you said, you have a group of people who are Black, but within that system, within that community, you have fragmented groups, and you have fragmented groups that ascribe to a certain I want to say culture, but subculture. So it's definitely some interesting stuff. It's definitely interesting. Um, would you like to interject?
Colonialism comes with casualties, as we see in the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm.
And now that you're heading in that direction, our history in the Caribbean starts with various forms of colonialism from various they call it countries that came and
Mm-hmm.
took over.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
when you walk through aspects of Jamaica, you will see the Spanish influence and the British influence.
Mm-hmm.
Buildings are still,
It's a melting pot.
yes, I don't know if it is the same in your country, but in certain
Mm-hmm.
parts of the island, you can see the various influences. And it has
Mm-hmm.
segmented aspects of our country. Also, what we must
Mm-hmm.
also remember is that when our ancestors were sent across, it's a combination of different tribes, and they were
Mm-hmm.
placed with each other in order to create some form of confusion, and hence different countries have come up with their own dialects because of that sort of fusion of different tribal influences. So in the case of this, I believe that, and I'm thinking now, colonialism has also fractured that country in such a way that there's much suspicion. And I think colonialism that brought Christianity and persons looking at the history and see the evils of colonialism, they're linking one with the other and said, look, these people are representing the persons that have inflicted some form of pain. So maybe that is where I'm seeing the answer now, the unwritten answer where distrust, they're associated with the wrongdoers and therefore let us take them out. But it's still the whole thing about power. Everything is centered around power. The whole thing about the cattle, the whole thing about the grazeland, the whole thing about wanting to be pastoral, living out like nomads and so on. And it's unfortunate that so many lives had to be lost over the years. And Lord, their colleague has written You have seen the pictures of the
Mm-hmm.
murders. Very sad that one would turn against their own. But again,
Mm-hmm.
the whole thirst of power and transitioning from one level of weaponry to another,
Mm-hmm.
mm, coming back to the three P's.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and the main P there is power. The
Mm-hmm.
underlying thing there, for me, the underlying tone here is power.
Wow.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. And like you mentioned, within your country in Jamaica, you see the impact of colonialism, and even within my country, in the Bahamas, we do have influence. We have influences from other countries, especially British influence. So the impact of colonialism, sorry, is there. And so that brings me to my final point, resolving conflict. And so another important theme of Dr. Akaiso's book is resolving ethnic and constitutional questions. And I believe this is a major turning point in the book. And many of the issues that are recurring within this conflict that arise within Nigeria um, relies on resolving ethnic and constitutional questions. And the community would benefit greatly if relevant parties address these key issues, that being who does the land belong to, who are the rightful owners. So you have those recurring questions that continue to come up that incite conflict. And so it brings about violence, and it brings about these issues where people are caught in the middle. And here you have different ethnic groups fighting among themselves to determine, I'm the rightful owner. No, I'm the rightful owner. So you have, these groups fighting within themselves when these questions should be resolved. These questions should be resolved by the relevant parties, and that would greatly ease and greatly resolve some of these issues within these communities. So I don't know if you have any input as it relates to that point.
Only way that they can have peace, is if they have some form of dialogue. There has to be a center or a middle ground that everybody has a chance to meet, but there has to be an external mediator, someone that is not tainted with the whole conflicts, whether it is ethnic or religious or economics. Um, there are other countries that have gone through what is called peace talks. And through peace talks, everybody has a chance to see things from various perspectives and notice that even though they are different, they have similar needs. And one of the needs is need to live, the need to eat, the need to survive, the need to provide for their families and so on. Um, I do believe that if there's a chance that these dialogues can take place and there's a mutual understanding and joint decisions be made, then that should help to alleviate some of the issues. In moving in parallel to my country, there are areas where peace talks had to be created between dons in order for communities to thrive, because a lot of young persons have started to either move out or died, and that would cause a gap in the way called employment, because all of a sudden you don't have enough men, you don't have enough women within a particular area to fill jobs. And so that would mean that there's a shortage and they would have to seek. So the thing is, if they continue with this war without resolution, without some sort of mediation, they're going to find themselves losing out greatly. on population, and the thing that they want the most, they're going to lose.
Thank you for your input. And do you have anything further you would like to add as we move forward to closing this discussion?
It is important that we learn to understand who we are and what is it that we really want out of this life, and how to go about it in a peaceful and respectful way, and how to respect differences and identify similarities, so that there's some form of social unity within societies, economic unity also. So just saying that as a race, we really have been tortured by colonialism. And until we start to see ourselves for who we really are as a powerful people, we'll always have these sort of conflicts.
Well, thank you, Lisette, for your input. I have enjoyed our discussion today. And so thank you to our listening audience for listening to our first discussion. And so if you would like to know more about farming with guns, go to amazon.com to purchase the book by Dr. Darlington Akaiso, Farming with Guns. It is available for purchase. I would like to thank my co-host, Lisette Hawthorne. Lisette, thank you again.
For
And
inviting me.
lastly, thank you. And lastly, I would like to thank the viewers for listening in. Like our page, Can We Talk, for future notifications of upcoming discussions. Thank you and good evening.
Evening.